Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's session. We're thrilled to have you here for what promises to be an insightful discussion on financial crime investigations, past, present, and future trends. Um, Today, I will be accompanied by Geert Delrue, who has almost 40 years of experience in anti-financial crime industry, and he will be sharing his uh, very exciting insights and practical advices on how to combat financial crimes effectively, and his special typology-based approach. And I will be just an interviewer asking geared questions and navigating the discussions. Also, for those who joined through LinkedIn, I encourage you to join to the Vimeo platform, as it is more efficient transmission and to do not have any interruptions with the transmission. So for more user-friendly experience, please join us on Vimeo, but you can stay on LinkedIn as well. But first of all, let me firstly make our new audience a short introduction of who we are. The AML Certification Center is a global community of anti-money laundering professionals and the leader in training and certification in Europe for individuals and businesses. We develop our own global standards in the field of anti-money laundering knowledge or anti-financial crime knowledge based on best practices and international standards in AML, CDF, plus, as we call it, drawing on a large pool of our best experts. And what we believe that financial crime thrives on one key factor: its profit. By targeting and dismantling these profit-driven motives, we strike at the heart of what drives these crimes. And we believe that education is where this journey begins. That's why we do what we do. All right. And as I've mentioned, our guest today is someone who has spent over 40 years at the forefront of financial crime investigations. He has witnessed firsthand the evolution of money laundering techniques, regulatory changes, and the growing sophistication of financial criminals. Please join me in welcoming Geert Delrue. Geert, let's start from the beginning. What inspired you to pursue a career in financial crime investigations? And could you share with our audience your biography as well, please?
Thanks, Andre, for your introduction. When I started my career, let us say 40 years ago, I was the first policeman with a university degree. But as every young guy, I wanted to investigate murder, drugs, and all that. But since my background with my university degree, the boss says, you're going to do financial crime. Oh, that was something I didn't expect. But after these 40 years, I'm glad he did, because I always enjoyed in these 40 years doing or combating or fighting financial crime. That's why, in fact, it was my whole career. I did my job, but also my hobby. So, and vice versa. So I had a very good time. I could do my job, and also my hobby was uh, deepening my knowledge in financial crime. That's why I wrote all sorts of different books on financial crime, tax fraud, forgery, um, scams. And the last 10, 15 years, I've been specialized in financing of terrorism and money laundering, and also tax fraud. So it's always been in my, let us say, bio. Like here, I spent sharing knowledge is strengthening efficiency.
So yeah, and the question is, what inspired you to pursue a career? Maybe some personal aspect or something you found out during your studies, or what was the break even point?
Yes, but like I just told you, I've always been in financial crime. My initial goal was to do investigation on drugs and murder and so on. But since I've always been in financial crime and I really liked it, I have never done anything since but financial crime. So I really liked it. My hobby was my work and vice versa. That's I already, let us say, explained it a little bit before.
Great, Geert. Thank you for taking us through your journey. It's fascinating to see your personal motives behind becoming anti-financial crime professional and fighter, and joining us in this very important mission. And but looking back at your 40-year career, it would be very interesting to know your personal view of what has changed the most in anti-money laundering efforts and anti-financial crime overall. Um, yes, from that point back in time.
Well, what's changed or the evolution is it has become more complex. I will talk about it later also. I think about complexity. In the old days, uh, let us say, a criminal, he laundered his money himself. That's why he got caught very easily. But with the evolution, uh, crime has become more and more professional. So we came from self-laundering, criminals who launder their money themselves, to professional money laundering. So criminals now uh, make appeal to their colleagues who are specialized in money laundering. And here I show you a tree with all sorts of money laundering techniques. And you see there are a lot, but there are even more. And every day they are becoming more and more new typology techniques. But in my trainings, I also talk about the history of money laundering. And we see in the history of money laundering, some techniques have stayed the same. But of course, with new evolutions like the internet, we have now cyber laundering, and it becomes more and more complex. And because they are using more and more professionals, it's more and more difficult to detect these atypical or techniques which are being used. That's in short, let us say.
All right. Yes, I agree with you on that the techniques become more sophisticated, and maybe you could share with our audience some examples of the most memorable cases that also shape your approach to fighting financial crimes. Some practical, real case studies, as to speak.
Yes. Well, uh, one case who gave, in fact, let us say, uh, the start for my typology based approach was a case in financing of terrorism where I did a house search. And during this house search, I found a paper in the kitchen. I I put open a drawer and find a paper with all ciphers on it, dates, and a handwriting I didn't understand, but it looked like a bookkeeping. So I thought it's the household bookkeeping. So I put it back. Then 2 years after, yes, 2 years after, I came to know Hawala banking or underground banking and how the books are being kept. And there when I saw one example of that, I said, oh, yes, 2 years ago, I found a paper, but I left it there. It might have been a proof of Hawala banking, but since I didn't know this typology, this method, I left it there. So that was, let us say, the beginning of the embryo of the making of my typology-based approach, which means if you don't know what techniques, typologies criminals are using, how are you going to detect in transactions money laundering or even financing of terrorism? So this is, let us say, this case was in fact the embryo for the development of my theory on typology based approach. And I hear there was a dog who was confirming what I'm saying.
Yeah, some
Okay.
interruptions from the side. All right, please continue.
Uh, Here, the underground banking, how is this system working? Well, in fact, Tom wants to send money to Sue in another country. And Tom and Sue are giving to each other a password or a token. Then Tom gives the money to, they call it a hawalader in the sender country, and he gives also the token and the password. Then the hawalader in country A uh, takes contact with his hawalader colleague in country B, gives says you have to give, let us say, €1,000 to someone who gives you the code or the token to you, and then you can give the money in the local device. This is a technique which has been used or is being used a lot by financiers of terrorism. Why? There is no paper trail. It's only Hawalader A who calls or sends a message on WhatsApp or whatever, and he says, this is the token, this is the amount you have to give to the person who gives you the token. And it's very easy. Then maybe you will say, but one received €1,000 in one country, and the other one gave 1,000. Well, this is, I cannot explain this today, but that's what I will explain in the trainings, how the compensation is done between the two. So here I show it as a simplified scheme. In the world, you have sender, you have the money transfer officer Hawalader A, money transfer office Hawalader B, and the beneficiary. And it goes in both ways. And what is interesting, every ethnic group has its own corridor of transmitting money. So you have different corridors. You see them in the left down under corner, different corners. There are even more. Here I just give some examples, but there are so many, let us say, underground corridors. Every ethnic or even people who come from, if you have, let us say, 50 ethnic groups in your country, well, there are 50 corridors of Hawala banking or underground banking. Why we call it underground banking? Here in our Western countries, it's not allowed because these hawaladars have no approval of the authorities. But in fact, it's a system which exists already before our money system, from the times of the Silk Road, because there are a lot of robbers along the road. So they found out a system to pay someone in another country without moving the money. And this is what is being used mostly for financing of terrorism, but also for money laundering.
Yes, it is. In fact, it clearly shows the example of Hawala system as other systems as other similar systems, I mean, shows how criminals could completely overthrow any legal methods and measures of financial transactions to completely criminal tactics.
Andre, I forgot something. If you want to know, if people want to know more about Hawala, they put Hawala, the name Hawala in Google and my name, and there are 3 presentations in Dutch, French, and English, very in detail how Hawala works. That's what I wanted to give you.
Yes,
So just
make sure
my
to
name and Hawala in
Google.
Google, and of course.
All right. Thank you, Geert, for that overview of those money laundering techniques. It clearly shows how criminals could exploit different financial systems in different regions, and how sophisticated they could be sometimes. And maybe you could share with us also one of the most sophisticated money laundering technique you have ever encountered based on that.
Yes, like I told you, now we have more and more professional money laundering. And one of the most sophisticated techniques used nowadays is trade based money laundering. Oh, excuse me, trade based money laundering. And it's a technique used by professional money launderers because they have companies all over the world, and they use false invoices, bank transfers. Goods are being sent by, like, also with phantom shipping, all sort of money laundering techniques. They are combining, so it's very difficult to trace it. For instance, I saw on the internet there's a course on trade-based money laundering for more than a week in England. That it's such a complicated thing and very difficult to detect. And that is why I, let us say, made this composition of possibility to detect it. You have all sorts of transfers of goods through water, land, air, but other, let us say, uh, actors also are involved, like financial institutions, tax authorities, police, and justice, and they have all information about, let us say, commercial activities. And they should put their, let us say, cooperation together to to make it possible to detect this trade-based money laundering, because it's they use, like I told you, false invoices, bank transfers. So for a bank, it's very difficult to say, "Oh, this is an atypical transaction." If you ask an invoice, they will make it. They will transfer the invoice. So this is one of the most sophisticated and most difficult uh, techniques to detect.
Yes, I agree with you here completely that trade-based money laundering is actually probably the hardest to detect money laundering technique in all financial institutions, as the manipulation of goods value is very hard to detect without some sophisticated automated technologies and also educated staff. So it's probably the hardest one to detect.
Yes,
Thank you for
well, I'm
that.
sure.
Thank you for mentioning it. And I would also like to remind our audience that at the end of this session with Geert, we'll have a Q&A session in the end where you will have the possibility to ask Geert or me maybe some questions. So make sure to stay tuned and grab this opportunity. Grab this unique opportunity, by the way. All right. So, as financial regulations have evolved, so have criminal tactics, right? Money launderers, and criminals are constantly innovating, finding new ways to bypass detection. But how exactly have these methods changed, and are financial institutions managing to keep up?
Well, during my trainings, this is a scheme of my typology-based approach where I make a difference between indicators, which are not uh, really techniques, but they might give you an indication of money laundering. Of course, I don't have the time to explain it all, and I have also techniques. I call it operating modes. These are really the most, uh, let us say, effective techniques which are being used. And I can assure you, you have some few days. I can talk about it, let us say, 3, 4 days, only about money laundering techniques. Here, I want to answer your question. You see there also in color AML strategy. That is what criminals always do. They uh, always invent counter strategies to maybe new regulations or new things that obliged entities make to make it more difficult to launder money. And I make the difference between two strategies. It's the avoidance strategy. For instance, they make financial transactions under the threshold of 10,000 euro. For instance, in Belgium, the threshold is 3,000 euros cash maximum for commercial activities. So here, a merchant, he cannot receive more than 3,000 euros in cash for one transaction, commercial transaction. Another strategy is the concealment strategy. So they want, of course, when I explain the money laundering process in my trainings, there the objective of of the money laundering is to conceal the criminal origin of the money. And here they use sleeping companies, front companies, offshore, and so on, but also underground banking. I explained you already underground banking, why it's so interesting. There's no paper trail. So that's what criminals want. They want no detection, no paper trail. So in fact, that is what, let us say, the most criminals adapt each time. And they even try to intervene in the regulation making. So they have people who try to, let us say, uh, to make the new regulations not as difficult as normally they want. So they are, let us say, uh, introducing themselves in the whole legal economy, even in financial institutions, parliament. You never, it's incredible. Okay, that's
All
the
right. Thank
answer.
you. Thank you. Thank you for that overview. And probably let's dive a little bit deeper and explore further how money laundering techniques and other financial crime techniques have evolved over the years.
Well, I already told you that since the beginning of money laundering exists since more than 3,000 years before Christ. But normally they say, oh, money laundering, Al Capone is the inventor of money laundering. No, that to say the techniques to conceal criminal money or illegal money already exists 3,000 years ago in China. So let us say this money laundering exists already very long. But what I told you, there has been an evolution from self-laundering. So, for instance, a car thief, well, he steals a car, he sells it, and immediately he sells a cell phone or another car in the legal economy. Let us say that's simple money laundering. But you have let us say, the evolution to professional money laundering, also called third party money laundering. And there they use lawyers, accountants to make, let us say, complex schemes to make or to break the paper trail, to conceal the original link with the crime. And that's why I made, let us say, uh, here I give you an example of a scheme of a complex money laundering technique, and it's called compensation technique. And here we see we have a criminal economy, we have a legal economy, and legal economy, construction or cleaning companies need, let us say, cash. And criminals, the criminal account, have cash, but they want to make money on their bank accounts. So what they do with all sorts of front companies, shelf companies, let us say, they make false invoices to the companies in the legal economy. These companies, you see it on the right, they pay these invoices, they are false invoices, and so criminals get their cash on a bank account. In counterparty, the criminals give cash to the companies in the legal economy. They can use to pay people, let us say in Belgium, you say in black, so unofficially, let us say. So this is called the compensation technique. This has been, let us say, described or found by our Belgium FIU. Then we see, oh, of course, that's it. Sorry.
Yes, yes. It's clear that criminals are always evolving, but so are the tools and techniques and approaches we use to fight them and stop financial crimes. And now let's explore further how a typology, your special approach, typology based approach, can improve AML efforts.
Well, let us say I told you I'm a former police officer and I look at crime, money laundering in a different way as compliance officers, because compliance officers are in the preventive track of money laundering, while I, as a police officer, was in the repressive track. Now, in the 40 FAT recommendations, they say that every country should implement the risk-based approach. So in every AML code, that's no problem. That's a very good approach. They say you have to make a difference between client risk, transaction risk, geographic risk, product risk. But of course, every obliged entity can give another risk here, but you can't see it very clearly. I put in the center, let us say, crime risk. But once you have implemented all those rules, 40 FAT recommendations, the national AML code into your organization, then it begins. How are you going to detect atypical money laundering techniques? Like I explained with the house search in financing of terrorism, if you don't know what techniques are being used, then it's more difficult to detect them in your current daily commercial or financial transactions. And that's why I developed, let us say, the typology based approach. Remember the tree with all these money laundering typologies? Well, I like order and structure. I had a mathematical education, and that's why I put this typology based approach. All these typologies, I make some categories before recording the reporting entity, a lawyer or a financial institution, an insurance company, a notary. They have to look at other typologies, other indicators. So I make a difference between that. And we will see in the trainings, money laundering is in three phases: injection or placement, layering, and integration. Well, in each of these phases, some specific techniques are being used. Breach of AML code is an indicator. Well, if you see, let us say, if the AML code says you are obliged to give training to your uh, collaborators. If you don't give it, are you a money launderer? Of course not, but it might be an indication. Or the breach in professional and AML obligations. For instance, in Belgium, you cannot spend more than 3,000 euros in cash in a commercial transaction. If you do a transaction above this limit, are you a money launderer? Of course not, not always, but it might be an indication. I already told you about the money laundering strategy, so I will skip that. And also important judgments. I will, maybe I don't know, I will speak about the reporting, investigating, and prosecution chain. Well, if at the end the judge says this is no money laundering, then you have done a lot of work. The police, the prosecutors have done a lot of work. And so it might be interesting to know what the judge thinks about money laundering. And of course, the predicate crimes. And no money laundering without predicate crimes. So in some trainings, I talk about human trafficking, drugs trafficking, human smuggling, not on, let us say, I always been a financial investigator. I don't know anything about drugs, but I know something about the financial transactions which can be detected. So I look at risk-based and typology-based approach as complementary.
Hmm.
So here you see again this, the categories of typologies different, and then no a division between indicators and the money laundering techniques.
Yes, it's clearly. Thank you for the that comprehensive overview of the typology-based approach. As this thing is not currently common in the organizations, as everyone uses and follows the FATF or FATF recommendations on the risk-based approach. And use only risk-based approach in their anti-money laundering efforts, but typology-based approach clearly helps organizations identify and fight financial crimes, and as it strikes into the root of the problem of which type of financial crime is it? Because on the type of financial crime, on the type of suspicious transaction, whether it's related to drug trafficking or human trafficking, depends the following path and path of the money laundering scheme and overall identification technique, how we could identify the criminal and etc. Because depending on the type of the crime, they have different techniques and different structures. They utilize different organizations, whether they would use shell company to obscure the trail, or whether they will use some art or etc. Also depending on the size of the transaction and the size of the profits they receive from that business, because it's if it's a multi-billion profitable business such as uh, contraband or drug trafficking, they would use different techniques, and the money will go then to other sources for the placement during the placement phase. So typology-based approach is clearly a very good idea and a very good complementary aspect to the risk-based approach, which we typically use in the organization. So it is very interesting. And now let's explore after so we could receive and our audience could receive more practical steps from your experience. Now let's explore what are the common mistakes that could be done in AML investigations.
Well, let us say money laundering, financing of terrorism is complex. That's for sure. But what I always did try to do in my investigations is make things short and simple and also structure. That's something I use also in my trainings, a very, let us say, strict structure, because that is how we can retain things more. And what do I see a lot? You, as an obliged entity, you only need suspicion for, let us say, reporting to the FIU. And sometimes I think that financial institutions, but also other obliged entities, are doing too much work. They are doing work as a private investigator or as a police officer. So for me, let us say, it's not always uh, necessary to dive in clearing what under or predicate crime is at the source of the money laundering, because in Belgium it's like that, and I think in other countries, and I think in the 45th recommendation they also speak about suspicion. That's the only thing you need for reporting to the FIU. And that's what when I give trainings to bank institutions here in Belgium, they are diving too deep in some things. And for me, let us say, that is not always necessary. And that is, for me, let us say, a common mistake that is being made. The investigation, unraveling what is the predicate crime, is not necessary for compliance. You only need a suspicion. Of course, you can ask some things to let us say make a base for your case. Is it money laundering or not? But sometimes I see that banks are diving too deep in these transactions. That's something I think is most common mistake.
Yes, I completely agree to this statement, as financial institutions here, especially in Europe, are used to do double work, as to speak, and create overwhelmed reports on to the whether to the FIU or to the senior management, and probably this is what makes overall compliance efforts inefficient, and that's where we can miss other money laundering suspicions during performing that that double work. So keeping it simple is very important, and I completely agree that you only need suspicion. You don't need to justify your suspicion if you
No.
already have a suspicion. It's
Yes.
another work. It's a work of it's a job of other people to investigate it further, whether it's uh, a real suspicion or not.
Yes.
Yes, and it's clear that AML professionals must continuously adapt to new threats and maybe simplify their efforts. What is your guidance for compliance teams and law enforcement so they could collaborate better?
Well, this is a scheme I also use in my trainings. This is the reporting, investigating, and prosecuting scheme, I give the name. And you have the phase of you as an obliged entity who are in the preventive track, and the phase of, or the repressive track, the phase of or stage of police and justice. And let us say the advantage of using schemes is here. Do you see the FIU is, let us say, in the organigram, is, let us say, element of the preventive track. But here in this scheme, you see that the FIU has also 1 feet in the repressive track because they have to, let us say, report to the prosecutor's office some uh, money laundering cases. Well, here normally I explain it, then I can explain phase one, phase two, what is happening in them. But what I want to see is more cooperation. Maybe Andre, you will ask it later, I don't know, but cooperation between the different actors in these three phases is very important. And knowing what is doing the other. For instance, when I was a police officer and I asked information at the financial institutions, it could take some time that I say, but how is that possible? But now, while I'm giving trainings to collaborators of the financial institutions and we talk to each other, I'm beginning to understand that it sometimes takes time to find information, maybe with the electronically storing, it may be easier, but you have to understand one another. So also the actors of the preventive track have to understand, let us say, the actors of the repressive track. Sometimes I hear, and the police is asking this and that. Why do they need to know that? Well, they will have their reason. So that is what something I want to uh, achieve. Is also me as a police officer. I made this, let us say, typology based, also with the intention to give the people of, or the reporting entities or compliance uh, entities, to give them another view on, let us say, money laundering and money laundering techniques. For instance, when I give a training, one at banking institutions, the first question, or one of the first questions is, give me some money laundering techniques. And then I use an app so it appears on the screen. No more than 4 techniques they can put on the screen. Then I ask myself, what are you looking for then? So that is, I think I have a complementary task in with my trainings to the compliance collaborators. This is something, of course, very short. Normally, I talk about what is happening phase one, phase two, phase three. And this is a question I got at the beginning of my trainings. People say reporting, and we do a report to the FIU and we never hear anything about it. Well, that's normal. And that's what I want to explain with this scheme. So
Yeah,
trying to
I
understand each other and cooperate.
yes, absolutely agree. And as we have performed also uh, organized previous events, always the topic which is being raised is the sufficiency of collaboration between the obliged entities and the FOU. And the problem is that the entities do not receive feedback on their reports, which could probably make the suspicious transaction reports more efficient and not such overwhelmed. Not to so the FIU itself would not receive too many suspicious transaction reports and would not be so overwhelmed with the work. And
Yes.
this is the question, and this is the issue actually that's as of now still not addressed by the regulated entities. All right. Geert, looking back at the other side of financial crimes, what makes terrorism financing harder to detect than money laundering?
Yes, that's a very good question. And I could answer you with this scheme I use. Uh, Here I make a comparison between money laundering and financing of terrorism. And the origin for both are non-financial crime, financial crime, and cybercrime. And which are the main channels for financial flows? That's of course cash, bank accounts, cryptos, and other. With other, I mean that but that's another part of the training normally, that it's not only money which is being laundered, but also uh, real estate. So other things, watches, yachts, all sorts of things are used. Now, when we look at what is the origin of money for money laundering, we see three big categories of crime: non-financial, financial, and cybercrime. And we see for financing of terrorism these three: non-financial, financial, and cybercrimes. But they also have sponsors, for instance, state sponsors, but also private sponsors. They have uh, legal commercial activities, which criminals don't have. It's always illegal money. And they have also some religious and charitable organizations which give or collect money for them. And we see, let us say, for money laundering, you only launder illegal funds, criminal funds, while financing of terrorism has illegal funds at their disposal, but also legal funds. And they have to black this money. Blackening, you have whitening of money, but here we call legal funds are being blackened to use for terrorist activities. This is, in short, let us say, why you see it's sometimes more difficult, because there are more sources for money for financial financing of terrorism than for money laundering. Excuse me. Oh, sorry. And here I have another slide. Here you see money laundering, illegal activities, while financing of terrorism uh, have a lot of more sources for money or funds to fund their activities.
Yes, thank you very much for that comprehensive overview again, Geert. Money laundering is clearly just one side of the problem. Terrorism financing and cybercrime present unique and growing threats also, as the focus of obliged entities is typically on money laundering. And with the rise of digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, and digital financial crime or cybercrime, detecting illicit activities has become even more challenging. But how specifically the rise of those aspects has changed the anti-money laundering landscape?
Well, like I already told you, uh, let us say with the coming of the internet, we have cryptos and cyber laundering, and it has become more and more complex. And what we see with the introduction also of crypto and cybercrime, well, crypto and cybercrime are, let us say, uh, being used as origin for criminal money. So crypto money frauds, cybercrime, these are, let us say, at the origin for money laundering. But what do we see also? That crypto and cybercrime is also used as a means, so as a technique for money laundering. So it's not only at the origin, but cyber and crypto are being used and as a means for money laundering. And this makes it also more complex for, let us say, detecting. In the old days, you had only financial crime and non-financial crime, and that's it, and bank accounts, and that's it. But now you have all sorts of cryptocurrencies. You have, let us say, you can build, for instance, NFT, non-fungible tokens. You can build a house in the cloud. You can sell it. You can buy it. So all these things are making, let us say, money laundering more complex. Oh, sorry.
Yes, it's all right. Now let's move further and switch to the AI and new technologies. With AI, automation, and evolving regulations, the future of anti-financial crime and AML is bound to look very different from today. But will these advancements be enough to combat financial crime effectively? Geert, let's hear your predictions and advice for the future.
Okay. You remember on the background, you see the scheme I used to explain how to detect trade-based money laundering, uh, which is a very complex technique. And it's only possible if we, in the future, I already talked about cooperation, but public-private. But for instance, in our legal systems, it's very difficult to make cooperation public-private because we have there the GDPR, so the protection of our identity. And so communicating data from the public sector to the private and vice versa is very difficult, but it's something will need in the future. And that is why I would like, because everyone is now talking about artificial intelligence, well, you can anonymize uh, transactions. There's no name on it. For instance, all these actors in the background with police, um, tax authorities, you name it, they can put their data anonymized in one big database and then put or use artificial intelligence to detect, for instance, here, the trade-based money laundering. I give an example. For instance, in the Netherlands, the 5 big banks have put their transactions anonymized in one big database, and they use artificial intelligence to detect atypical transactions which have been, let us say, been through these 5 banks and which are related, and it has given results. So let us say for the future, cooperation, public-private, will be a need or a must in the future. And of course, the artificial intelligence, and it's possible to anonymize, to let us say, go against this GDPR, then you can anonymize transactions. So this must be a possibility for the future. And there's also, let us say, a shift from the use in the old days. Let us say financial crime is now being, let us say, transferred to cybercrime. And this makes it also more and more difficult, and we will be obliged to use AI techniques to detect money laundering and financing of terrorism. Here I show you that the financial crime has more and more begin to become cybercrime. For instance, let us say at the beginning of my trainings, I talked about CEO fraud and boiler room fraud. Well, then they used the telephone for that. Nowadays, it's the internet, email, other things to execute CEO fraud or boiler room fraud or Ponzi fraud like that. Okay.
Great, thank you very much, Geert. We're going a bit over time, but we still have some topics to cover. I think it's not a problem if we go like 10 minutes over to give a more comprehensive overview of Geert's experience. And let's switch to the next topic, the predictions. Geert, what do you think financial crime will look like in the next 5 to 10 years? Let's go a bit further beyond the
Yes.
usual projection period.
Well, in fact, I gave the answer in my previous in your previous question. Financial crime will become cybercrime. So now we have, let us say, three big categories of crime: non-financial, financial, and cybercrime. Well, in the future, cybercrime and financial crime will be one, because the old techniques, for instance, 2 years ago, there was a fraud who came at my house to sell tickets for a child cancer fund. And he came to the wrong house because I immediately saw it was a fraud and I have him arrested. So these type of crimes will, let us say, uh, vanish. So cybercrime will be the crime in the future, and let us say financial crime will be absorbed in this cybercrime. This will be two in one, let us say.
Yes, as the also the number of criminal organizations and also state-backed criminal organizations, cyber criminal organizations, in fact, grows as well, and their techniques to steal the money, steal cryptocurrencies, as we've seen from the recent case with Bybit, where almost $1 billion in cryptocurrency were stolen by cyber state-backed cyber crime organization. It clearly shows us that they won't vanish, those organizations, and they will still be there will be even more of those organizations. And the next thing, as the banking sector evolves and probably some of the banking players may adopt crypto into their transactions, and probably CBDC as well, which is government digital currency, also will be in play. The criminals, cyber criminals, may target even those CBDCs and make everything even more complicated for the banking sector, because keeping safe your treasury, physical treasury, is one task, and everyone knows how to do it. But how to keep safe your digital assets, that's the question. And we'll have a lot of issues with it in the future. All right. And what do you think about the current regulatory landscape in the European Union in particular? Is it enough, or should we regulate the industry more?
Well, like I already told you, uh, crime is evolving, money laundering is evolving, and we have, let us say, we are at the sixth AU AML directive. The problem is that regulations are not always uh, quick enough to tackle some new evolutions here with cryptocurrencies or something like that. A stupid example is when internet came and we had email, our prime minister was being hacked by two students, his email account. Oh, the country was, the email account of the prime minister was hacked, but they couldn't prosecute these two guys because there was nothing in the criminal code to prosecute them. So what did they do? They condemned them for theft of electricity. So you have to be inventive, but they prosecuted those two guys for theft of electricity. What I want to say is that regulations are fine and there must be regulation, but it must be possible to make them more quickly. So the the making of the regulations should be more quick because the evolution in crime and the internet is evolving so quickly. It's sometimes you cannot prosecute someone because you don't have anything in your penal code to prosecute them. So, okay, very good. Six AML EU directives. The FAT recommendations are adapted every year practically. There's also a new adaptation here in February. So this, oh yes, already this year there's a new adaptation to the 40 red FAT recommendation. So yes, according to me. But something what is also is important is the enforcement of these regulations. What if you have a lot of regulations, but if it's not enforced? Maybe with the new AMLA, the new European FIU, is already a new step ahead to enforce these regulations.
Yes, probably with the new anti-money laundering authority of the European Union, which will be a major player, a standard setter for the global regulations for sure. With AMLA, the regulations in the European Union and the guidelines on how to adopt them will be made more quickly with less bureaucracy and periods of thinking. So
Let's hope.
this will make our regulatory landscape more quick, I think, and which is a good thing considering those evolutionary aspects which you covered. So
Yes.
very promising, very excited to see, and we anticipate to see the first steps of AMLA in terms of the development of the guidelines and etc., which will, of course, raise additional questions in the future, as it always do. All right. Finishing up a little bit, what practical advices you could give to our compliance professionals today?
Well, here maybe I mentioned it already. Here I show you a scheme which I use in my trainings to give an overview who are the actors in fighting money laundering. And I already mentioned cooperation is very important. Sometimes in the legal track, all these actors, they make new regulations, but they don't think about possible counter strategies that criminals could take. For instance, they introduced the UBO register in whole Europe, ultimate beneficial ownership registry. Well, do you think that one criminal will put his name in this register? Of course not. A counter strategy will be he will use straw man. So, of course, I think these legal actors should cooperate with people who are in the field in the empiric track to advise them of possible contra strategies which could be made by criminals. For instance, in the UBO register in whole of Europe, well, there are a lot of Donald Ducks and who are administrator of a company. Why is that? Because it's not enforced. In some countries, maybe well, but here in Belgium, it's only enforced, let us say, by the banks. When they have a new client, they have to look at the UBO, they have access, and if everything is concordant. And another, it's the accountants, external accountants, when they have a new client, they have also access to the UBO register, and that's all. So no one is controlling. And if I want to make a counter strategy, I use a company where I do not need a notary. So then I take an internal accountant. He doesn't have to verify the UBO register. And for instance, I take an account outside of the European Union. So no control of the UBO register. So these things, I think, should be taken into account. And also in the empiric track, they should have more contact and vice versa with the legal track. That's my advice. So let us say there are, let us say, three top predictions is AI, of course. I already talked about that. It will transfer AML compliance, and then also stronger global regulatory frameworks and collaboration, and rise of crypto and digital assets regulation. But of course, regulations, it takes time, and that's something we don't have, while criminals are always a step ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you for your practical advices and again for the predictions, which we already covered a little bit. And now let's switch to the question and answer session, which we promised to you, and answer a little bit of questions, probably two or three. But let's start from the questions which we have here on Vimeo. And the first one was from Ami. Thank you, Ami, for the question. Great presentation. Thank you. It's addressed for Geert. I find that a lot of financial intelligence units only focus upon the repressive track and do not understand their role within the preventive track. I think it is the question, and what do you think, Geert, about that? Is whether it's true that FIUs focus on the repressive track and still don't understand their role in the preventive track?
Uh, I agree partially with that because if you remember the scheme I showed you with the FIU in the preventive track and the repressive track, normally in the organigram, FIU is part of the preventive track. So they receive reports from the obliged entities, and they have to analyze, let us say, these reports. And then when they see, or they have, let us say that also a degree, you as an obliged entity, you have to have suspicions, while the FIU needs serious indications before going to the prosecutor. But I think it's something that is in every FIU. They do not, let us say, I won't say control, but give enough information to, let us say, the obliged entities. But maybe they don't have enough people, I don't know, but it's correct. They should give more, and it's here in Belgium the same. They should give more, let us say, feedback to the obliged entities. And I agree with you. But of course, maybe they don't have enough people here in Belgium. I think it's the fact that they don't have enough people, and of course, it's one of their obligations to give feedback. It's in our anti-money laundering code. It's put that the FIU should give feedback to the reporting entities or the obliged entities.
All right, thank you for answering that question, and Ami also thanks you for answering to that question, and thank you, Ami, for the question. And let's switch to the questions on that we have on LinkedIn. And the first question was from Alexei, and he asked that. Nowadays, 90% of fraudulent activities are possible due to employee dishonesty. Please comment how you deal with it. Maybe I can also address this, how we address this issue during our trainings with Geert, that we highly value and address the overall compliance culture in the organizations and help build during the training phase also the compliance culture within the organization, because when you have a robust compliance culture, no one will ever think about being dishonest. And also the development of mechanisms such as internal mechanisms such as whistleblower mechanism, which is also very efficient for keeping the compliance culture in place, and also the tone from the top, or the participation from the senior management, active participation, I mean, from the senior management, and emphasizing the importance of AML and compliance within the organization. Maybe you have also something to add, Geert, to that.
Well, uh, that's very correct. Yesterday, I gave a training, and there I was talking. For instance, every obliged entity here in Belgium has to have an internal procedure manual, and there you have also to describe how you have to screen. So you have to describe how you screen your new employees. So this is also, let us say, an obligation of the um regulators, that if you have new employees, they have to have a strict uh, screening of your employees. And an example is very shortly, it's cuckoo smurfing. That's a technique where you have to have cooperation of a bank employee in the bank A here, for instance, in country A, and you have to have the cooperation of a employee in another country in another bank. But of course, I don't have time to explain this, but it's a technique which is being used. Cuckoo smurfing. You can look at the internet if you want to learn more about it.
All right. Thank you, Geert, for that addition. It's very insightful And let's probably ask two more questions. What do you think? Because we are completely over time, but let's give our audience
It's so
some good.
interesting. I could talk whole day.
All right. And the next question is from LinkedIn from Carlos. And he asks about match fixing. Match fixing is another way to launder money. And I will add that match fixing problem issue is one of the most important ones on the agenda in the gambling and iGaming industry. And Carlos asks, athletes are being paid with cryptocurrencies. How to detect it?
Yes. Well, uh, I'm from the old school, so cryptocurrencies, I have my doubts about it in this way. What is the objective of money laundering? The objective of money laundering is buying things in the legal economy. And then I ask you, what can I buy with cryptocurrency of big amounts? Well, that's a Lamborghini, I think, a Tesla. But what other can you buy a house with cryptocurrency? I don't know. Maybe it's possible, but in Belgium, not. And I think in a lot of other countries, it's not possible. So for me, cryptocurrencies are, let us, mainly used as, let us say, in the second phase stage of money laundering, the layering phase, to obscure the link with the criminal money. But of course, I don't say it not being used before you have, for instance, uh, cryptocurrency credit cards where you can buy, let us say, uh, things as luxury goods. But for me, the objective of money laundering is to buy the, let us say, as big as possible things in the legal economy. And for the moment, I think maybe I'm wrong, but you cannot buy a big real estate with crypto money. Maybe in Dubai, I don't know, but they buy uh, buildings with suitcases of cash money. That's something I know. But cryptocurrency, for me, it's, let us say, more a means to, you have a lot of cryptocurrency fraud scams is being used to fraud other people. I won't say it isn't used for buying things, but for the moment, I think the goods you can buy with cryptocurrencies are limited. Of course,
Yes,
little
I
things you can buy, but for laundering objectives.
yes, I absolutely agree with you on that statement. It depends on the jurisdiction, actually. And you've mentioned Dubai, and actually, it is so that you can buy, and it was a topic for numerous discussions and research papers on how Dubai fights real estate money launderers who purchase real estate for cryptocurrency, obviously, and maybe cash out for those suitcases and then buy it for cash. And this identification that Carlos is asking about, it's actually a topic, an issue for the regulators worldwide,
Mhm.
and the football clubs and agencies will be added to the list of regulated entities in 2029, if I'm not mistaken, which is a big advancement in the regulatory framework, because it's clearly a source of multi-billion profits.
Yes, in
So they
Belgium
should
we
be
have
regulated.
in Belgium football clubs and football agents are already obliged entities for 2 years already. So where
It's
once for a time we are far ahead.
it's a great initiative. I think that Belgium also played a role in shaping that a
Yes.
new definition, which is very good. So for now, answering to the question how to detect it, utilizing blockchain investigations if you have any suspicions, and in terms of the gambling industry, match fixing is identified independently on whether the football players are being paid in crypto or cash or real estate, or match fixing has its own suspicious red flags. So, and all right, let's wrap up with the last question, and the next question is let me see. Um, oh yeah, about the U.S. Massively investing um, in France, if I'm not mistaken. The question is from Gruber Anne, and the U.S. will invest massively um, in France. Maybe. What's your feelings about this?
It's the first thing I hear about it, but the US will be investing in France. Maybe it's possible, but yes, has it to do with money laundering? I don't know. What
Yeah,
I do want,
maybe please rephrase the question so we could understand whether it's France or some other issue. Maybe it's
yes,
another thing. Please add to this question. Maybe we can. Yes, in France.
yes, it's the first thing. Maybe it's as a consequence between the reunion or between Trump and President Macron, but I don't think it's especially in France. They invest in more other countries, but no, I don't see. Maybe it's in the future it will show, but I don't see anything. Let us say which should look suspicious about it. There's one thing I want to say. Uh, one technique is also the golden visa. And now I heard yesterday that Trump will give uh, identity cards or for a certain period to people who invest in America. Well, we have the same system here in Europe. Now they are trying to get rid of it, but still some European country give golden visa to people who invest here in Europe, and then they can travel, let us say, for 6 months in Europe with this visa. But the investment in France, no, I don't have any idea. No, they invest, let us say, in a lot of countries, I think. Sorry, I
Yes.
don't see any.
Thank you for raising that topic of golden visas. Yes, this requires absolutely a more sophisticated effort from the government's agencies on how to identify the source of money being invested into the economy, and absolutely, this is one of the most popular themes of investment migration for PAPs, in fact. And for former PAPs or actual PAPs, it doesn't matter, but which is also a higher risk factor, which raises the overall risk for the economy of being invaded by money launderers. Yes. All right.
That's why we
Let's
are here.
yes, that's where we are, and let's see what future will bring to us. All right, let's wrap up today's event. Geert, thank you very much for that insightful and comprehensive discussion. Your experience is amazing. Your approach to typology based to typology based anti-money laundering efforts is fascinating, and thank you for also answering to the questions of our audience. And let's switch to the last section of what we do with Geert, leveraging his unique and large expertise. We provide the businesses and regulated entities with training solutions. They cover all the. They're led by top experts, by the best of the best, as you can see. One of them is Geert Delrue. It includes interactive sessions with experts, and all the trainings are made dynamic. They are made cross-functional and integrable, so we utilize our platform solutions and Vimeo, in fact. And the businesses and regulated entities, the MLROs, will receive training records, advanced analytics on who has participated. Also, will receive branded certificates with your logo and the logo of AML Certification Center. These trainings could be CPD accredited, and also the regulated entities will receive a dedicated account manager who will support them 24/7 if you need so. And then also you will receive the recorded session, and it is shared with for unlimited period of time with you. And in our trainings, as you can see, we focus on the risks, on the particular risk specifics of the entity, and they are tailored to your organization and made flexible to discuss and train on newly identified issues. So if some fraudulent activity becomes more active within your organization, we'll cover this during our training session. So make sure to give us your requests. You can do it through our website, and let's talk further. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you again, Geert, and see you soon.
Thank you, Andre. See you soon.